Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren. I am your resident intuitive baddie. And I'm here to talk to you about learning. I am on some shit. So I'm gonna start this off with just a little bit of background. So if you've been following me or if you've been watching a couple of my videos, you might have already picked up that I have a high interest in psychology. And when I got out of high school and went to university, as many people do, that is what I studied for about 3 years. And then I dropped out. So for me, when I think about institutionalized schooling, I have an aversion to it. And I'm starting to kind of just unpack why. Structure is necessary. I think structure is very important because I'm learning this as a business owner. When you have very little motivation, or when you don't feel like doing anything, structure and routine is what you need to fall back on so that you keep going. And I think what I'm realizing from school is it wasn't that I didn't like school or I didn't enjoy school or school wasn't for me, which is what I had thought back then. But it was just the way that most people approach school just wasn't the way that I should have approached school. I am a slower learner, I'd like to say. It takes a longer time for information to really ground and land in my brain to really make sense. And I think it just wasn't enough time for me to be successful in the sense of how semesters are structured and stuff. And I think the workload as well. Like they typically suggest a 5-course workload, which isn't too different from when you're in high school, right? Or at least for myself in high school, the way that my school worked was you only focus on about 4 subjects per semester. So it was an 8-course workload over the full entire year, but you're focusing on 4 at a time. So when I went to university, naturally I thought, okay, 5 seems reasonable. And yeah, I think the fact that it's harder, or you're intaking information at a much different level, I think it really does weed out people who are just coasting. But I think it's just one of those things where if you require more focus, you should just lighten the load. So if I were to ever go back to school again and try to complete that degree, I would definitely reduce the course load. So why am I talking about this right now? I had an insight that came in that was pretty much just learn to love learning, because without learning, there is no growth. And I think this is obvious. But I'm starting to realize cognitively, especially as I get older and as people around me are also getting older, I definitely see a difference between people who are constantly learning and growing, and then people who are not, or people who don't really want to learn anything new, people who are more set in their ways, or who think they're learning because they scroll on Instagram and they see news there and don't really realize that they're actually being programmed. But for some reason pass that off as learning. And I'm here to motivate you to just love learning things again, and to love learning without it being so tied to a goal. Because I think that's the other thing about is it post-secondary? To institutionalized schooling that I don't really like is that there's all this pressure when you have an exam, right? Which, if you're going by how I was looking at it, and as a slower learner, it's just like you have all this pressure to absorb a large amount of information, and then after the fact, after the exam or whatever, it's seemingly useless. I personally, I think co-op type of courses are the best kinds, because then you're implementing right after, but it really depends on the career you're going for. Anyways, so your brain is like a car, meaning it is use dependent. So the same way that if you don't use a car for a couple years, things rust. It's like if you're not turning the car on every now and then, it makes, like, the parts of the car will decay or the stagnation makes the car deteriorate. And that's the same with your brain, because basically without any new input, your brain just relies on the patterns that are already there. So learning and curiosity are tied to dopamine and engagement. I am reading from notes, by the way. Trying something different. So what does it really mean to truly learn? Because, like I said earlier, there's a lot of people who assume that they're learning because, you know, they're scrolling on Instagram, whatever's on their news feed is new information. Maybe they turn on the news all the time and they think they're learning that way. But without effort, feedback, integration, it's not really learning. It's not. Because repetition without challenge just keeps the brain busy. It doesn't allow expansion, which is really what you want and what you need. And this is also how to reverse aging or slow down the aging process. Because, I mean, if you look at older people, the reason why a lot of them end up declining cognitively really fast is simply because they're not challenging their brains anymore. So their brains are now defaulting to nostalgia or whatever they're used to. And that's why we get so many people who, when it comes to things advancing in technology, have an aversion to it rather than seeing it as a way, something to adapt and something that can be applied to make their life better. And I think it's really funny, especially because we're in the age of AI now, or at least the age that AI is available to us. And it's so synonymous to when the internet came out. Like, I remember older people in my family being like, yeah, the internet's gonna ruin us, you know, it's gonna make us dumber, this is terrible for the environment, we should just leave things the way it is. And you know what, now we are this generation that is pretty much coming out with the same type of speech. It's like there's so many people out there that are looking at AI and are just so scared of it. Everyone's just like, oh my God, the robots are gonna take over. You should understand that if this is artificial intelligence, what's the real intelligence? If you're using it, you're not really intelligent, blah, 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 blah. So dumb shit. Because at the end of the day, AI, just like the internet, just like anything, any other advancement that comes our way, is a tool that is a means that can help progress your life faster. You just have to understand how to use it. You just have to learn. And then I think that's a lot of the issues with a lot of people is they don't want to learn. And that's not to say that there isn't environmental impacts, or that, you know, there aren't negative aspects to AI, but it's one of those things where it's inevitable. It is inevitable. Their solutions for all those things will probably come down the line, but as of right now, like, it doesn't help the cause to just not use it. I think there's this notion that, okay, if we all reject this, then we'll offset whatever negativity, and that's the only way to do it. And that's not the truth, because the truth is this helps a lot of people. This helps a lot of business owners. This helps a lot of creatives. This helps a lot of people who, without AI, have to do so much more work to accomplish the same things. So it's like, if I am somebody who, I don't know, can't afford an editor or a copywriter or somebody to manage my social media captions, it's like, why should I feel terrible about using AI? Why should I feel like that's, I don't know, like it's cheating or whatever? It's like, no, this is helping me progress my thought. And yeah, when you use any type of tools, that is how you should look at it. You shouldn't look at it as, this is doing the work for me. This is an aid to what I am doing. This is helping me get to my goal faster, so that you can serve whatever people you are meant to serve with whatever it is that you put out into the world. But yeah, anyways, circling back, growth is participation in life. You can't expect to just get everything without growing. You can't expect life to be easy like that. Everything takes some amount of work. And another thing is just that, like, learning can be fun. Learning something and then having that information to share with other people is such a beautiful thing. It's such a great thing to be able to do, to be able to spark conversation with what you know. And yeah, I think that's something that I've noticed specifically in the last year, where it's just like, a lot of people, if you don't already know what to talk to them about, it's really hard to talk to people, because people don't want to learn new concepts. They don't really want to talk about things that are outside of the realm of what they know. And that's the issue, is a lot of people also just don't want to feel dumb. And it's like, well, if you feel dumb, it's because you lack knowledge. And the only way to combat that is to actually go get knowledge. And it's just like, something that I've been learning for myself is to just not feel bad for not knowing everything. There's so much to know in this world, and there's so much we will never know in this world. And I think once you accept that and you start looking at the world as, what can I absorb? What do I want to absorb? What's useful for me to absorb? Then it just takes that pressure away. and it makes life fun again, because that's what we're here to do. We are souls that came to earth for an experience. So why would you want to stay stuck in the same experience over and over again, in that repetition? Fire up some new neural pathways, learn some things. Yeah, that's what I have for you today. So if you like this type of awareness, if you like being aware and you have certain goals that you want to get to and you have certain blocks you want to remove, hit me up for shadow work. Email in the description as always, and let me guide you. Allow me to keep you accountable when it comes to your journey of self-mastery. So thanks again for listening. I hope this resonated, and until next time, goodbye.